Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video tutorial. This is Marc Brunet and today we're going to be talking about shading. So I'm going to show you guys how I approach shading surfaces whenever I paint. So we're going to start very simple. We're going to start with a simple shape, so it can be anything for now. Like I said, I'm going to start really easy and then we're going to up the level as we go. Let's go back to normal mode. That would help. And yeah, just so at first, just create regular shape, nothing fancy. We're gonna start easy, and so if you had a line art first, this is where you would fill that in with with a solid color. I start with dark and I build my way up to lighter shades. So this is what we're gonna be doing here. But first, let's create our light setup. So we're gonna start with something simple. So only two lights. The first light is going to be the main light source. So probably won't see much here, but I'll add an outline to this in a second. So you can imagine that it's pointing in that direction, and this is kind of like a cone that's pointing towards my object. So we're gonna go and lock our layers, so everything that I paint is only going to be on whatever I have in my layer at the time. And we're gonna go select the soft brush. So wherever this light is hitting first is where it's going to be the lightest. So it's probably going somewhere along this line. Let me unlock it for a second. So the light is pointing kind of like this, and this, you can imagine this is a rounded surface, kind of like this. So this line is probably where it's going to be the hottest. So this is where the color is going to be at its brightest. So just look it back and then go over this with a soft brush. So it's going to be something like that. And the bottom here, probably a little bit darker. But yeah, that looks pretty good. Now, well, actually guys, I'm gonna use another color also to do these things. Now, instead of black here or dark gray, I'm gonna use let's go like red. So for this one, I mean, imagine that this light source is coming from the same direction. So it's not. I'm not gonna draw it again, but it's going to be pretty much like a clone of it. So we're gonna select this color. Then we're gonna go over this, but for red, it's probably better to just go in overlay mode. That's going to look a lot better. Now we're gonna add the second light source, which is the bounce light from the scene. So if if I had a different background color, then that bounce light color would be different also. It just sort of takes whatever is in the surrounding area and bounces it back to the object. And how that works is it's basically the main color here that shoots photons everywhere, and the ones that miss, so the ones that don't hit the object directly, like this one, and then come back to your eye, so that's why you see it light. And the ones that miss, so this one, let's say this one goes behind and it hits the wall here, hits a wall here, hits a wall here, and then they bounce in all direction, and some of them happen to hit back the object from the other side. And wherever those hit, they take the color of the background, and then they make a little bit of a little bit of light here. So if you do that a million times for all the light, all the different all the bajillion of photons that do the same thing, you get sort of this kind of light coming from the background. So you can imagine where the way I see it is that the point where this light is going to be at its brightest is sort of on the opposite side of the main light. So the main light source is pointing here, right here. So I would imagine that if you create like a circle around this thing, right? So this goes behind, this goes back in front. The brightest would be kind of like here on the other side of my object, and you get the bleeding of that color on the edges here. So it's not going to be too bright, this color, because it's it's light that is being lost, and then the few that are bouncing back and hitting the object, that's what you're seeing. So it's not going to be as intense as the main color, obviously. For the bounce color, for the bounce light, in this case, since it's white, it's just going to be white on my object. So the red's not going to mix with any weird, it's not going to behave too strange in this case. Yep, so you get something like that. Now we're gonna add another simple shape to that to have it interact, and it's going to be casting shadows on our object. So now I could have had those on a different layer actually, but whatever. I'm just gonna create a selection around them so that I don't paint over the round shape underneath. And we're gonna color these also. So for this one, I don't really care if it's colored or not. Let's keep it simple. So we're gonna do the same deal that we did for the the first two steps. So the main light source. So in this case, it's probably gonna hit somewhere right here. That would be, if this is a cylinder that goes like this. This is where it seems where it would hit at first. So that's where the color is gonna be at the hottest, the brightest. So something like that. Now we're gonna do the bounce light. So bounce light. Let me draw actually the bounce light in my scene because I don't have it. So the bounce light is gonna be like this, coming from all directions, bouncing back on my object. And in this case, since my object is being kind of covered, so it's this area here is blocking the bounce light from reaching this point, from reaching this area of my cylinder. So it's not going to be the same. So my bounce light initially is going to be reaching maybe this far. Why did I lose my selection? Let me select that again. Okay. So my bounce light is not going to go and hit the whole cylinder. It's going to hit only the sides because the other part is blocking this particular light source from touching it, basically. But it doesn't mean it's not going to get anything, as you will see in a second, because now it's not going to be the background that is used as as a bounce light. It's going to be this area right here. So the light's going to bounce on this surface and then bounce directly back to my cylinder. So as opposed to the background, it's going to be a lot more intense because it's really next to it. It's really near, and there's much more sort of light particles that are gonna be hitting directly. So in this case, you take the color of the closest object. So in this case, it's going to be this color, and that's what's going to bounce directly back on the cylinder, like that. And in this case, it's going to be red. Next step is to add our casted light. So casted shadow, I mean, definitely not casted light. So the shadow is going to be the darkest color on your object. So in this case, it's like this color right here. That's pretty much the darkest. And imagine like this big shape, this big, if you look at it flat from the top, it looks like a rectangle. So from the top, it would look like this. And that's what you're gonna print on your object underneath. So if you print a rectangle on this, it would look something like that, right? So we're gonna do this shape, but underneath the object, sort of lined up properly. So this part here is where they kind of touch, and everywhere else you should see the shadow because there's some distance between the object. And where they touch, obviously it's so close that you can't really see the shadow. So shadow's gonna be looking like that. And I'm gonna do the same thing with my red, but the red is going to be the darkest color on this object is this type of red. So the same deal. They touch here, then you go down like that, as if you're projecting the rectangle on the rest of the shape. And you can see I'm going over the bounce light, but I shouldn't really. I should keep it as it is. But I'm gonna go with this first, and now we're gonna reapply the bounce light where it should be. So in this case, there's still some bounce light here. It doesn't matter if if the shadow is there. There's still bounce light. There's no really bounce light. There's not any bounce light on this side, but it could be just a little tad right there. And same deal with this. So there should be some here, maybe a little bit here. Very subtle. And the closer you get to the sort of the middle here, the darker your color is going to be, because less light is able to sort of escape and reach your eyes. So that looks pretty good. Now, one more step that you could do, sort of to ground your object even further in your scene. Let's say you have an outside scene, or especially in this case, what I do is I would add like a top light, so like the light from the sky, which is very, very subtle, but it adds a little bit. It adds something to the whole thing. And in this case, like I said, I'm going to overlay mode because I'm just going to add color. I'm not sort of replacing color already there. And it's going to be, like I said, very, very subtle, coming from the top. So in this case, what it's going to do is that it's going to color my shadow a blue tint, as opposed to the one that is at at the bottom. It's not going to get that same kind of look. But the shadow here is going to be tinted by the diffuse from the sky. And when I'm for the red part here, sometimes when you do more saturated colors, overlay mode doesn't work, so you have to change your mode depending on the if it's saturated or not. In this case, using the normal mode works a lot better than overlay mode for that type of blue applied onto that red. But yeah, that's pretty much it for simple shapes, guys. Now we're gonna do the same thing for an arm. Always try to simplify any kind of shape to a shape that is a lot simpler to understand in 3D space, I guess. When you look at an arm like this, there's a lot of details, a lot of stuff going on, but try to think of it as a simple shape. So in this case, it's going to be a cylinder. So we're going to be shading that cylinder the same way we did for the previous shapes we were working with. So I'm going to speed this up just a little bit, that we don't waste too much time. But yeah, so it's going to be the same kind of light setup also. So you can imagine like my main light source coming from the sort of the top right, and then I'm gonna have bounce lights from the back, on the left side ish, coming in from the background. Yeah, judging just from that, you can imagine the kind of light setup I have by just looking at the cylinder. And we're gonna be using that cylinder as a guide to sort of shade the arm. So, and initially when I first started, I would do a very, very simple type of shading. That's what I'm going to be starting with here. So, if you start with a line art, you just fill it up with a solid color, the darkest color that your arm is going to be. And then what you want to do is do the same thing as I did for the cylinder. So, where the light is hitting first, consider this is a cylinder. So very simple highlights. And this step right here, this is where I would stop when I first started. But as you get more experience and you understand volumes and space a little bit more, and yeah, it's just practice, and you'll start to understand how the shapes, like the smaller shapes, interact within the bigger shape, within the bigger cylindrical shape. But that just comes with time. And what we're going to be doing basically is just color picking, the different shades, and making sure that where the highlights hit on the cylinder, trying to make the same kind of, trying to make it behave kind of similar way on the arm and the different muscles. But this part just comes with practice and observation. Obviously, if you're starting, don't expect to be doing that. Like I said, when I started when I started digital painting, it was a very, very simple style of shading, but it works in the beginning, And now we're going to be adding the bounce lights, and as you can see, the line art is slowly disappearing. What I would have done normally is start with a solid shape instead of a line art, just so that you don't have to do that step. You don't have to do any erasing or cleaning up too much. You're just painting in the lights, the highlights, and you're pretty much done once that's over. That's pretty much it. As you can see, if you squint really, if you squint a lot, you can kind of see the cylinder. Very, very simple shape. And this is how you should approach, shading for pretty much everything. So any kind of shape that you think is very difficult, try to simplify it to a simpler shape. And, maybe draw the simpler shape right next to it like I did for this one. And try to go about shading your stuff like that. And yeah, let me know how that works. hopefully that was helpful, and well, I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye bye.